Hi! Welcome to this part of my review featuring the Goblin Slayer TRPG. If you haven't seen the other parts of my review, featuring this role-playing game based on the popular fantasy series, please check out the playlist in the description below. This time, we are going to take a look at the character creation system. In this video specifically, we are going to take a look at the first two steps of character creation, which are choosing a race and determining primary and secondary ability scores. Let's start with choosing a race. As I have mentioned in a previous part, it would have been better if it was choosing a species, but for simplicity's sake, let's call them races. You choose one race from 5 options: human, dwarf, elf, lizardman, and rhea. Once you've chosen a race, you gain that race's innate skills. You write these acquired skills in the skills section of your character sheet and write beginner in the mastery grade column for each. Each race also has their own ability score table and racial movement modifier. The ability score table will be used later to determine your primary and secondary ability scores. The racial movement modifier, in the same way, will be used to determine your movement speed. Now there is something very weird in this setting. It's about half races. Half races are only born between humans and other races. If you decide to play a half race, choose both of your parents' races. Externally, a half race will possess traits that are heavily human or heavily the other selected race. So this means that a human can reproduce with any of these species. In the case of the elves, well, I think that's viable or logical even within the fantasy context, because elves and humans sometimes do look a bit alike. And in the case of dwarves, this setting contains some of the tallest dwarves that I have seen in fantasy. They average around 150 centimeters tall, so that's not very short. However, imagine a human making out with a rhea. For those of you that do not know, the rhea are basically like the halflings of this setting. They look like children. And imagine a human making out with a lizardman. It sounds very yucky to me to have lizard man or lizard woman saliva inside of your mouth. So yes, that's pretty weird. Now let's talk about each of these races. First we have the humans. This is the race with the biggest sphere of influence. Possessing highly versatile abilities, they can work well in any class. In particular, they have high endurance and excel in abilities that allow them to throw things accurately over long distances. A human is treated as an adult at 15 years of age and generally lives anywhere between 50 to 80 years. This is another weird thing. I think that humans should live longer in this fantasy setting. Just take a look at the longest lived, most healthy people in this planet. They are usually located in those humble fishing villages and those rural areas. So in this fantasy setting, I think those conditions are met and they should live about to 90 to 100 or more years, in my opinion. When it comes to innate skills of the humans, you have things such as the throwing weapons skill and the long distance movement skill. Then we have the dwarfs. This race has the second largest sphere of influence, just beneath humans. Their height only reaches about 150 centimeters, but they have very tough, barrel-like bodies. They love liquor and fists more than anything else, and they are valiant. Though they may be heavy and dull, they have high stamina and dexterity alike, making them competent warriors. A dwarf is treated as an adult at 30 years of age, and generally lives anywhere between 800 to 900 years. You have innate skills such as healing affinity and craftsmanship. Then we have the elves. They are the rarest of races. They reside primarily in hidden settlements among ancient forests. They have long ears like bamboo grass leaves, are tall and slender, and are, above all, immortal, giving them eternally youthful appearances. They lack stamina and endurance, but they boast high movement speed and are skilled in bow handling and the spirit arts. Thus, they are well suited for being archers, scouts, and shamans. Elves grow slowly and have no lifespan, so a child is treated as an adult once they have become skilled in a field in their own right. They have innate skills, such as bows and beloved of the Fae. We will talk about skills in a future part of this review. Next we have the Lizardmen. They are the strongest, most valorous race. They name themselves descendants of the fearsome Naga, and many of them live in the jungles and wetlands of the south. They look like lizards standing upright, and because of their sharp claws and fangs, sturdy tails and tough scales, they excel as fighters and monks. They are also suited to being dragon priests who worship their ancestral dragons. A lizardman is treated as an adult at 13 years of age, and though they insist they will live eternally until killed, most of them do end up dying in battle, so nobody knows what sort of lifespan they have. When it comes to innate skills, they have things such as draconic heritage and strengthened immunity. Then we have the Rhea. This race is the most mysterious. Rheas are said to be denizens of the plains. They are about the height of a human child. They are nimble and are great at hiding, perhaps because of a natural shyness. At best, they are innocent and heroic, but at worst, they are pleasure-seeking and irresponsible. They possess very sharp wits, making them well-suited for being scouts. A Rhea is considered an adult at age 30, and they possess a lifespan of around 100 to 160 years of age. Concerning their innate skills, they have things such as stealth and cooking. I'm still very disappointed that they didn't include the Myrmidon species as a choice. For those of you that haven't seen that species, they kinda look like athletic Umber Hulks, more or less. Now they give you tips and advice on the sort of classes that go well with each of these species. When it comes to humans, they are pretty much good at everything, but without excelling so much at a particular task. In the case of dwarves, they are great for a sort of tank-healer combination of multi-classing. In the case of lizardmen, they're pretty amazing in my opinion, and they are well suited for monks because of their draconic heritage. They have natural armor and they have those claws. Combine those claws with the Iron Fist skill and you're going to have a killer monk. In the case of elves, because they are quite fragile, they are better as casters and as ranged combatants, perhaps rangers or scouts. In the case of the Rhea, they are also a bit like the elves. They are better for scouting operations, but as rangers I think they could also work well, and combining them with a spellcasting class. Now let's talk about step 2 in the character creation process, determining primary and secondary ability scores. As mentioned in a previous part of this review series, there are two types of ability scores, primary ability scores and secondary ability scores. Each species has its own fixed ability scores, but if you want, you can randomly determine these scores. But there is a chance that you will either get a less capable character or perhaps a more competent character. So it's up to you if you want to take that risk, that gamble. If you want to be average, just take advantage of the set scores presented in this book. Sometimes when a player character takes some sort of action, they will make a check to see whether their action succeeds. These checks are based on basic scores, which result of combining the primary and secondary ability scores. So as mentioned in a previous part, this will result in strength focus, strength endurance, psych reflex, technique focus, technique reflex, intelligence reflex, etc. These basic scores are each a total of 1 primary ability score and 1 secondary ability score. For example, a character's endurance focus is their endurance plus their focus score. The adventure sheet comes with a table to write all the basic scores, using primary ability scores as the rows and the secondary ability scores as the columns. In each of these basic score cells, write down the sum of the primary ability score to the left and the secondary ability score above. And this concludes this part of the review. In the next part we are going to continue with this normal character creation process. So yes, this is all pretty well laid out. I like it how you can choose if you want fixed scores or if you want to randomly determine those scores for the chance of a better character. Even if you get some mediocre scores, there is a mechanic to make your character a bit less incompetent, which basically allows you to take one of your lowest scores and raise it a bit to the level of average. Now when it comes to the species or races, I really like them. They are the more popular ones in the setting, but I really wish they would have included the Myrmidon species. It was a missed opportunity in my opinion, and I still find it very weird that the humans can reproduce with the other species. Applying a bit of logic, even within the fantasy context, humans and Reyas are just too incompatible in my opinion. Imagine a Rhea giving birth to a human baby. The fetus is going to be huge for that tiny body. And in the case of the Lizardmen, well, they are more like animals when compared to humans. So I understand in some fantasy settings when dragons assume the form of humans, then I think that would be the proper structural configuration to give birth to a human, or for the human to give birth to a draconic being. But in this case, it's too incompatible. If you pay attention, and I'm telling you this as a 40-year-old guy who has been noticing these things, most of the births in real life between humans that have complications during birth and that are born with defects or chronic mental and physical conditions, they have a lot to do with incompatibility between the parents. Biological incompatibility, that is. So if there's that risk between races, imagine taking that and applying it to the reproduction between different species. Thank you for watching this part of the review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that have been supporting the channel by sending drive-thru RPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.